light for you in dark places when all other lights go out.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of A Light in the Dark. Today we're going to be talking about the old profiles for the Fellowship of the Ring. This is actually back when the game first was invented, so the profiles look very different than what we have today. Now keep in mind exactly what we're talking about for these profiles. These were not competitive profiles. We're going to be going into what is almost 14 years old, and essentially it was made for a scenario-based game, was not intended at all for competitive play, like you pick out your army, I pick out mine. In fact, at the time, they didn't even have armies. It was good versus evil, and that is it. So it's really important to note that as I go through these profiles, some of these are going to be really unbalanced, but it's still really fun to look at and see, hey, what if it existed today? So we're going to go and start today with the Free People's Good in this case, and it's going to be the Fellowship. So let's start here and look at Frodo Baggins. He's already a little bit different. Number one, you can make notice 3 points of might, 3 points of will, 3 points of fate. This guy was a badass in terms of like Bilbo. Today we look at Bilbo, the one we have from the Master Burglar. He has this exact same stat line, and we love him for it. 3 might, 3 will, 3 fate is what makes him worth it, and Frodo would have been worth it at this time had he had this. Now, he also gets the options for Sting, he gets the options for the Mithril Coat, and the Elven Cloak. Now, if you put all of that on, you're talking about a huge point total, but you're also talking about a character that is more expensive than Bilbo is today. And if we look at it, we got 90, you're looking at well over 125 points, I believe. I'm sorry, I'm doing the math quickly, but essentially the Bilbo of today is not as expensive as the Frodo we're looking at here. Now, this Frodo has one attack, same as the Bilbo of today, and otherwise the stats are about the same. Courage 6 is actually very surprising for this character, but other than that, one of the biggest things we get to note is he does not have the ring. So this Frodo is actually not only more expensive than our Bilbo of today, but also, I have talked too soon. Here we go. We got actually the ring is on the second page. So let's see if it works any differently than the ring that we used to know about. It says Frodo is included with the ring. Frodo is included in the Force. He carries the ring. Frodo can put on the ring at any time and becomes instantly invisible to all but ring wraiths. The model is deemed impossible to see. As the wearer is invisible, he can move through other models, and other models can move through him. So while Frodo is invisible, he cannot fight with enemy that cannot see him. The Frodo model is effectively ignored. It is best to avoid confusion by not placing other models in touch if possible. If the ring is worn, that turn, roll a dice on behalf of Frodo. On a 1 or 2, the evil player can move him. And yeah, actually I'm going to go ahead and skim through here just not to bore you through all of this. But essentially, it looks like it's exactly the same ring that we are used to. He has to take a courage test in order to take it on and off, as described before. And yeah, I actually, here's the one cool note though. If Frodo is the only model left on the good side and he's wearing the ring, he automatically counts as a casualty. His mind has been taken over by its power. As many scenarios depend on Frodo surviving, this is very important. Now this might seem a little bit different, but I think this is exactly the same type of Frodo we're dealing with today, except without the 3 might, 3 will, 3 fate, and he gets all the same options though. I believe he still gets Sting, he gets the Elven Cloak and everything like that, just at kind of a cheaper price. He is, I believe, much cheaper by today's standards, which is good. Frodo at this point costs is like bordering like Boromir level standards. Actually, I think Boromir is cheaper than this Frodo at that point. Now, granted, he has the ability to turn invisible and walk through everything, but I'm not 100% sure I'd want this one. Keep in mind, our Bilbo today is unaffected by the dark side of the ring, and so, just a better model in general. So we're glad they've changed it a little bit from this version. Now, if we compare the ring of back then to the ring of today, I have to admit I do miss the ability to walk through models. As of today, only enemy models can walk through you. You can't walk through them, which is really unfortunate, but probably a balancing act for the game. So let's go into the next one. We got Samwise Gamgee, and I can tell you now, right now, I don't think this guy's changed at all. He has, fight 3, strength 2, defense 3, 1 attack, 2 wounds, 5 courage. I mean, Elven Cloak is nice. He doesn't have Sting. Remember, at this time in the movies, he wasn't granted Sting yet, so he is missing that. But other than that, this is a Sam that we are used to. And we can move on from him, and we can look at Merry and Pippin. Merry and Pippin, once again, have not changed. I don't believe they've changed really at all. I actually should have carried my book this time, but if you guys are following along, you can see, yeah, these guys, I mean, fight 3, strength 2, defense 3, 1 attack, 1 wound, 4 courage each, and a little bit of fate just to make them a little bit more survivable. So that is the Hobbits. Probably have changed the least of anybody, and why change them? They're Hobbits. So yeah, I wouldn't have changed them either. Obviously, the bigger one is we compare them to their Return of the King profiles, and then yeah, there's a massive leap. But for these versions, we're talking about just the same thing we're used to. So let's go ahead into Gimli now. Gimli is 80 points, so yep, everything we're already used to. He has the exact same stat line, fight 6, strength 4, D8, 2 attacks, 2 wounds, 6 courage. In fact, I believe the only thing that went down here is his fate. I believe he has more fate in the current version, but if not, then we're looking at a pretty similar profile. Even with his Elven Cloak, he goes back to, once again, a similar profile. Now, the one exception here that we notice is Gimli is armed with axes. All right, he has a 2-handed axe as an option. All right, and he can use both. But keep in mind here, what's special is he does not get to the 3 attacks. So he does not have Baruch Khazad that we are used to. So the current Gimli of today is actually the same cost, but just better. So you can thank the game designers. You have a better Gimli. So far, so good in the world of the Fellowship. It seemed like they overcosted him and everything. Now, keep in mind, this was for back in the day, so probably back in the day, these guys were absolutely fairly costed and no one minded them. But today's standards, I'm just doing a hypothetical, like, hey, what if? Now, let's go to Legolas. Now, we see he's a little cheaper, actually, than what we have today. He also cannot carry armor, hence he is before the Helm's Deep version of his profile. His Might, Will, and Fate, I believe, are the same. I want to say they've changed a little bit. I'm not sure quite where. I think he's 323 nowadays. I'm speaking from memory once again, but that, I believe, has changed, but he has gone down a little bit. Legolas carries a long blade, a hand weapon, and an elven bow. So nothing changes there. He has an elven cloak option, same as today. Now here's the one that changed. Deadly Shot. Legolas is an expert archer, even by standards of today. To reflect his skill, he is allowed to shoot 3 times in a shoot phase instead of once. So all of you out there, you Legolas players, you know 100% what is missing from here. It's missing its Shadow Lord killer. It's Ringwraith killer. He can't auto-hit in this version. That is actually granted to him later in the 2 Towers. So that's actually where he gets that ability. And I think it was a good ability to add to him. It definitely gives Legolas a lot more range. But you notice they added it for such a minimal cost of just 5 points. It actually isn't very much that they decided, oh, we can give this to him, which is good. I'm actually not against that at all. So yeah, otherwise Legolas hasn't changed much. So here's the one who potentially could have changed a lot. And we're going to talk about Gandalf. So Gandalf, here we are, 150 points, everything we're used to. It's fight 5, strength 4, D5, 1 attack, 3 wounds, courage of 7, 363. Once again, nothing new here. He carries a staff and a sword. His staff is a 2-handed weapon, so nothing changed. Staff of Power, to represent his staff's power, he can expend 1 point of will each turn without reducing his own will store. So, we're still good to go. Here we got Strength and Will. He can use it to increase the will value. Actually, here, though, it's restored to maximum. So, you can actually restore maximum will in this version. I believe today's standard only allows you to go one at a time. You'd have to channel it if you wanted to go max. So that's a cool change. I think it was a balanced change. Gandalf and Saruman could not have allied with each other at this time. There was no good Saruman. So if you're thinking, oh, Gandalf allied chaining, no, it wouldn't have worked. You'd more do it with like Galadriel, I guess, if you had it on the same play. You got Sorcerer's Blast. Used against a single enemy model. There must be no other model from the side obscuring his view but the target. Now, this is actually kind of interesting. There must be no other models from either side obscuring his view of the target, but partially obscuring cover is ignored. So I think this is exactly the same way that we know of it today. You can fire right through a phalanx, you just see a part of it. At first I was thinking, oh, you couldn't obscure him at all, in which case you would need a clear shot. But actually, reading this again, I think when they say obscuring his view, I think mean wholly obscuring. If this power is employed successfully, the target is blasted directly away from Gandalf. Roll a die and move that target the number of inches, or double that in centimeters. Any model that's in the path is moved aside and automatically knocked to the ground. If the model is fighting, then all models in the same conflict are knocked to the ground, whether friend or foe. If the model is blasted into obstacles, they are still knocked to the ground. The target is taking a strength 5, and every model that's knocked to the ground is strength 3. Nothing new. It seems like Gandalf didn't change, and actually, because Gandalf didn't really change much, I mean, I'm looking at him, there's only really 2 things that changed about him. I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to that. We got Immobilize and Command. You guys are used to that, so that didn't change. The only 2 things that really changed are Cast Light, and basically illuminates around him. Notice it says that it illuminates an area of 12 inches around him. And I'm not sure it specifies that in the current version, but basically the power lasts as long as his will, as long as he has 1 point of will remaining. Now, this is interesting. A lot of spells in just before the Hobbit rulebook only expired when they would fail a fight. At least Fury did. I'm not sure that Cast Light or Blinding Light had that effect where you always had to keep it to 1 will. I believe so, though. We're going to find out through these video series. So if Gandalf's will drop to 0, everything's extinguished. All right, yep, and then he also gets the target. You have to, in order to shoot him, or a target that is partially obscured by Gandalf will require a 6 to hit. Actually, that is important. Notice I think it says only a target that is, so anyone shooting Gandalf or a target that is partially obscured by Gandalf requires 6 to hit. Notice what this says though. It's not 6 inches, it's just him or anything behind him. So this Blinding Light was terrible back in the day. Probably wasn't protecting you from very much. Now he also has Terrifying Aura. I don't believe he has Terrifying Aura today. It says his power enables Gandalf to assume a Terrifying Aura. Just Terrifying Aura. It's a Terrifying Aura we always know. So this is actually slightly different Gandalf. Slightly different. I think today's Gandalf, just simply the Blinding Light, is a little bit better. Other than that, options for a horse and a cart have obviously not been included here. Now, the cart, I know it was in the Fellowship, but it's just simply because they hadn't sculpted the model, I think, at this point. Or they just didn't think you would ever use the cart in a combat role. And so, given that this was made for scenarios and not for competitive play. So, let's move on into Aragorn. Aragorn is the same man we always knew. Look at him. 6 fight, strength 4, 5 defense, 3 attacks, 3 wounds, 6 courage. Everything we already used to. They still gets the free point of might per turn, and it still talks about it. It's still, yep, mighty hero. Everything's pretty much standard. The only thing he's missing is a horse. That's about it. Obviously, he's missing Anduril. For those of you who don't know, Anduril allows him to wound in a 4-up. He is missing that sword. And I think he had it at this time. They just didn't think of that as a rule he should have. I'm not sure. Someone correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong on that. So let's get to our last one today. Boromir. Actually, you know what? We're not going to make it our last one. The reason why is because as I'm looking at this profile, Boromir hasn't changed either. So it's nice to know that your profiles haven't changed since the game started. It's a throwback. So let's get into one that's actually really awesome. And for those of you who have been standing by very patiently, I think you guys will enjoy this one. I'm trying to find one who is really interesting to me. Oh, here. Let's talk about Saruman. I'm going to get into the forces of darkness just a little bit. Now, I know I could have saved this one, and I'm probably going to talk about him again. But I wanted to cover him because he's just very interesting to me. We've seen Gandalf change just a little bit. Let's look at this Saruman that we have. And I'm only bringing him up just because it's fun. But so might, through will, fate, nothing changes. When you first look at the guy, nothing really changed at all. He carries a staff and sword, he gets that. He has Sorcerer's Blast, Immobilize, and Terrifying Aura. So he doesn't get Command, or Compel, as it would have been for him. And doesn't get Blinding Light. But look at this Sorcerer's Blast. This Sorcerer's Blast says this power can be used against a single enemy model. There must be no other models from either side obscuring his view of the target, but partially obscuring cover is ignored. If the power is employed successfully, the blast is directly away from Saruman. Roll a d6. Actually, hold up. Oh, sorry. Covering the wrong thing. Sorcerer's Blast is exactly the same. It's the Palantir. The Palantir is actually what I wanted to cover. The Palantir says, Saruman carries the Palantir, an ancient seeing stone that allows him to project his powers over a great distance. Using the Palantir, Saruman can use Sorcerer's Blast ability as if he were anywhere on the field. It is a good idea for the player to place a small marker in the position where Saruman will cast from while he works out this effect. Saruman can only use the Palantir as long as he has at least 1 point of will remaining. If he has no will left, then he cannot use the Palantir, even though his staff enables him to continue using magical powers. Crazy. So this is why, of course, this would have been an awesome evil Saruman. I'm not really sure which I like better, the ability to cast from anywhere on the field or an auto-passing priority. I gotta hand it to a Sorcerer's Blast that can blast anywhere on the field, though. So, I mean, you guys tell me in the comment section below. What do you think of that? Now, granted, this is probably needed to be changed due to balance purposes, but I'm still interested in what you guys think of this profile. Anyway, guys, join me next time. I'm going to go ahead and keep covering through these. It's always interesting to go over. If you want to leap ahead of me, you can always go to DCHobbitLeague.com. That's actually where I'm pulling these rules from. And until then, I will see you next time.